The pan is hot, the rashers go in, and within seconds the whole house wakes up to that smell. Bacon. Is there a better one on a Saturday morning? Kiwis love it. Piled on a butty, wrapped round a sausage, chucked in a carbonara, the treat that turns an ordinary breakfast into a proper one. It comes from a pig, so it must just be salted pork, surely, the way your granddad's bacon was. That is the picture on the packet, the happy farm, the rolling green hills. But I am an old man, and old men remember what real bacon was, and how it cooked. So I read the packets, all of them, and I watched what happens in the pan. And I found curing chemicals the World Health Organization has flagged, water pumped in to sell you brine at the price of pork, and a pig that very often never set a trotter in this country at all. So I will tell you. Go ahead and subscribe, I'll tell you everything. Number 10. Pam's Bacon. We start at the budget end, with the Foodstuffs house brand from Puck and Save and New World, the cheap rashers that fill the trolley without denting the wallet. And cheap bacon is where the trouble is thickest, because to make pork cheap you have to do things to it, and the cheaper the packet, the more has been done. The first thing to understand is the water. Look on the front for a phrase like, made from a certain percentage of pork, or look for added water in the ingredients, because a great deal of budget bacon has been pumped full of brine, a solution of water, salt and phosphates, injected right into the meat to plump it up. You are, quite literally, buying water at the price of bacon, carrying it home, and paying for it by the kilo. And you find out you have been done the moment it hits the pan, because that is the bacon that hisses and shrinks to half its size and leaks a nasty white froth into the pan. That white gunk is the pumped-in water and dissolved protein weeping back out. Real bacon, properly made, does not do that. It sizzles and browns. Watered bacon boils in its own injected brine before it will fry. Then there are the phosphates, those numbers around 450 and 451 and 452, added precisely to help the meat hold all that injected water, so it does not just run straight back out before you buy it. Think about how sneaky that little partnership is. The water bulks out the pack and adds weight you pay for, and the phosphate is the glue that stops the water escaping before it reaches the till. Without the phosphate, the trick would not work, because the brine would simply drain away in the packet and the con would be visible. Together they let a processor sell you a kilo of bacon that is part pork and part salted water, looking plump and pink and full, right up until the heat of the pan finally breaks the spell and the water you paid for comes weeping out. You wanted bacon. You bought bacon and brine, bound together with a chemistry that exists for no reason on this earth except to make the deception hold together long enough to sell. And then, in nearly all conventional bacon, the curing chemicals, and this is the big one, so let us open it properly here and carry it down the list. Number 9. Woolworths and home brand bacon. Cross to the other half of the supermarket duopoly, the two companies that between them run around 80% of the groceries in this country. And Woolworths has its own budget bacon under the home brand and essentials labels, the mirror of the Pam's rashers. Same low price, same story. The added water and the phosphates plumping cheap pork into something that looks like more than it is. The white weep in the pan, and the curing chemicals, so let us finally have that yarn. Nearly all conventional bacon is cured with nitrites and nitrates, the additives numbered around 249, 250, 251, and 252. They are what make bacon pink and give it that particular cured tang, and they stop dangerous bugs growing, so they do a real job. But here is the thing that ought to be on the front of every packet and is on the front of none. In 2015, the World Health Organization, through its Cancer Research Agency, classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen. Group 1. That is the top category, the same confidence level they hold for tobacco smoke and asbestos, and I want to be careful and fair here, because that classification is about how sure they are that it causes cancer, bowel cancer in particular, not about it being as dangerous as smoking. But the finding is real and it stands. And a big part of the concern is the nitrites, because during curing and cooking they can form compounds called nitrosamines, which are the actual troublemakers. That is the WHO, not some grandpa on the internet, and it applies to bacon cured this way whatever brand is on the packet. And here is the detail that makes bacon a particular case rather than just any cured meat. Nitrosamines form more readily under high heat. And how do we all cook our bacon? We fry it hard, we grill it, we crisp it up, right at the temperatures that encourage those compounds to form. So the very way we love to eat it, sizzling and crispy, is the way most likely to produce the troublesome stuff. Now, I am not here to tell you that one Saturday fry-up is going to do you in, because it is not. And anyone who tells you a rasher is as deadly as a cigarette is talking rot and doing the real science a disservice. The WHO finding was about steady, regular, everyday consumption raising the risk of bowel cancer over a lifetime. A small rise for each daily portion, stacked up day after day, year after year. The occasional treat is one thing. Bacon every single morning is another. And the difference between those two habits is the difference the headlines never bothered to explain. This old man is not telling you to never eat bacon. He is telling you to know what it is and to keep it a treat. Number 8. Signature Range Bacon. Signature Range is the other foodstuff's house label, a rung above the bargain line. Smarter packet, slightly higher price, the quiet suggestion of a better product. But a house brand does not raise a single pig. Foodstuffs signs a contract with whichever small goods maker will pack rashers cheapest, sticks its own label on them, and lines them up against the branded packs, and the fundamentals underneath are the same across the shelf. The added water and phosphates, the nitrite cure, and everything the WHO said about it. And the question the packet works hardest to avoid, which is where the pig actually came from, and we are going to get to that, because it is one of the great open secrets of New Zealand bacon. A slightly nicer packet at a slightly higher price does not change the pork inside or how it was cured. It changes the picture on the front. And the picture on the front is doing a great deal of work to stop you reading the small print on the back. Number 7. Premier Bacon. Premier is one of those everyday brands that has been on Kiwi shelves a long time. The workhorse rashers most families have fried at some point, sold on price and familiarity. And it carries the everyday bacon story in full. Read the pack for the pork percentage and the added water, and cook it and watch for the shrink and the white weep that tells you how much brine went in. Read for the phosphates holding that water in. And read for the nitrite cure, the 250 and 251. That puts it squarely in the processed meat the WHO flagged. But Premier is a good place to finally have the conversation about the pig, because it is the thing almost no Kiwi knows, and every Kiwi should. A very large share of the bacon sold in New Zealand, including under familiar local-sounding brands, is made from imported pork, brought in frozen from places like the European Union, Canada, and the United States, then processed here into bacon. And under the labeling rules, a product can be made in New Zealand from what the pack calls local and imported ingredients, which is a lovely soft phrase that can mean the pig was raised on the other side of the world. So the rashers with the green hills and the Kiwi-sounding name on the front may well have come from a pig that never saw this country until it arrived frozen in a box. Let me put a number on it so it lands, because most people simply do not believe it when they first hear it. The great majority of the pork eaten in New Zealand as bacon and ham is imported, not local. We are talking about the bulk of it, not some small fraction. That is not a conspiracy, it is just economics, because imported frozen pork is cheaper than New Zealand raised pork, and the processors buy it to keep the price down, and the rashers cheap. But the labeling makes it wonderfully easy to keep you from noticing. Made in New Zealand sounds like made from New Zealand pigs, and it is not the same thing at all. Made in New Zealand can mean nothing more than that a foreign pig was cured and sliced and packed here. The pig, the actual animal, the thing your bacon is made of, may have lived its whole life in a shed in another hemisphere. Once you know to look for the words born and raised in New Zealand, rather than just made in New Zealand, you will start to notice how very rarely the cheap packets are willing to say them. Number 6. Farmland. Farmland is a familiar small goods name, and like so many of the mid-shelf brands, it sits comfortably in the everyday basket, trusted, unremarkable, bought without a second thought, which is exactly why it belongs on this list, because unremarkable and trusted is how the everyday problems slide by unnoticed. The added water and the phosphates, the nitrite cure, and very often the imported pork behind a local-sounding label. And here is why the imported pork question is not just a matter of food miles or national pride, it is about welfare, and it is a genuine issue. New Zealand moved to ban the worst of the sow confinement systems, the sow stalls that keep breeding pigs in crates barely bigger than their bodies. But some of the countries that export pork into New Zealand have weaker rules, and pork can arrive from systems that would not be legal for a Kiwi farmer to use. So the caring shopper who assumes their bacon came from a decently treated New Zealand pig may, without any way of knowing it from the packet, be buying pork from exactly the kind of confinement this country decided it did not want. The soft phrase local and imported ingredients is where that whole question quietly disappears. Subscribe to show that these videos do help and do make sense. Number 5. Kiwi bacon. Now here is one where the name does a lot of heavy lifting, because it is right there in the brand. Kiwi bacon. You could hardly ask for a more patriotic packet, the very word kiwi stamped across the front, and it plants the obvious thought in your head that this is New Zealand bacon from New Zealand pigs. But a brand name is just a name. It is not a statement of origin, and it is not a promise about the pig. Unless the pack specifically tells you the pork is New Zealand born and raised, the name alone guarantees you nothing, and the same imported pork question hangs over it as over the rest. And the everyday chemistry is all present too. The added water pumped in and held with phosphates, the nitrite cure that puts it in the WHO's processed meat category, the salt, and often a bit of sugar or dextrose in the cure as well. The patriotic name and the familiar look are exactly the sort of thing that switches off your attention at the very moment you should be reading the back. A word on a label is not the same as a fact on a label. The fact lives in the small print, in the country of origin statement and the ingredient list, and that is the only place worth trusting. Number 4. Hutton's. Hutton's is a long-established Kiwi small goods name, and it makes the everyday hams and bacons that fill the deli end of the chiller. Trusted, traditional, been around for generations. And the traditional image is precisely the thing to be careful of, because tradition on the front does not change the modern industrial reality on the back. The added water, the phosphates, the nitrite and nitrate cure, the 250 and 251, and everything the World Health Organization said in 2015 about processed meat cured this way. There is also the sodium to think about, which runs high through this whole category and gets forgotten behind the flashier worries. Bacon is a salty food by its nature, and the Heart Foundation has been asking Kiwis to cut back on salt for years, because most of us eat far more than is good for us, and high sodium drives the blood pressure that feeds heart disease and stroke, still among the biggest killers in the land. A couple of rashers can carry a serious slice of your day's sodium before you have salted a single other thing on the plate. It is a treat food, and treated as an occasional treat it is fine. The trouble is how many of us have quietly let the occasional treat become the everyday habit. And notice how it all stacks, because this is the thing the single scare stories miss. A rasher of everyday supermarket bacon is not one problem, it is a little pile of them at once. It is processed meat, with everything the WHO said about that. It is a nitrite cure, forming those nitrosamines under the hot pan. It is a good hit of sodium against a nation that already eats too much. It is added sugar in the cure, and it is imported pork of unknown welfare hiding behind a Kiwi name. No single one of those is going to fell you tomorrow, and I would never pretend otherwise. But they arrive together, in the same rasher, every time, and if that rasher is a daily habit rather than a weekend treat, those small things are compounding quietly, morning after morning, in a way no one ever sat you down and added up. That is the whole reason an old man bothers to make these videos, to add up the things that are designed never to be added up. Number 3. Beehive. Beehive is one of the most recognized bacon and small goods brands in the country. The little bee, the packets in every supermarket chiller, a brand woven right into the Kiwi idea of bacon. And that very ubiquity is why it earns a high spot, because the more familiar and trusted a brand is, the more completely it gets bought on autopilot, and autopilot is what this whole video is trying to switch off. Read a Beehive pack the way you would read a stranger's, and you will find the familiar architecture of conventional bacon. The pork percentage and whatever water has been added, the phosphates, the nitrite cure that the WHO flagged, the salt, the sugar in the cure, and the origin question, that local and imported ingredients phrasing that so often means the pig came from abroad. None of this is hidden exactly, it is all there in the fine print as the law requires, but it is written small and dull precisely so that the cheerful familiar packet does the talking, and the small print does not. The whole art of it is to be so trusted that you never turn the pack over. Number 2. The economy shaved and diced bacon. Before the big one, I want to talk about a whole category rather than a single brand, because it is where everything on this list reaches its worst, and that is the cheapest economy bacon, the shaved bacon, the diced bacon bits, the bulk bacon pieces sold for a song and tipped into pasta and quiches and salads across the country. This is the bottom of the barrel, and it is the most watered, the most phosphated, and often the most heavily cured of the lot. Because these products are sold purely on price and convenience, every corner that can be cut has been. The pork content can be low and the added water high, which is why economy diced bacon so often stews and weeps in the pan rather than frying, releasing that telltale white liquid as the injected brine cooks out. The nitrite cure is there, the phosphates are there, and the origin is as anonymous as it gets. Cheap imported pork the norm. You reach for it because it feels like a thrifty way to get some bacon flavor into a family meal, and what you are actually buying is a small amount of heavily processed, watered, cured, imported pork, sold cheap because there is so little real pork in it. Cheap bacon bits are not a bargain. They are the least pork for your dollar on the entire shelf. And do the sum properly, because it will change how you shop. When you buy a cheap pack that is, say, a good fraction water, you are paying the bacon price for a load of brine. Weigh what is actually left after it has wept its water into the pan and shriveled down, and work out what you truly paid per gram of real pork. And the cheap pack very often turns out to be dearer than the good one that was mostly meat to begin with. The good pack does not shrink to nothing, because there was little water in it to lose, so you need less of it and you get more from it. The cheapness of the economy pack is an illusion that only survives as long as you never weigh what is left in the pan. Weigh it once, and the spell is broken for good. Number 1. Hellas. And here it is, the biggest of them all, the name that for a huge number of Kiwis simply is bacon and sausages, the brand that dominates the chiller from one end of the country to the other. Hellas. A genuine New Zealand success story, an enormously popular brand, and precisely because it is the everyday default in so many households, it earns the hardest look of all. This is not about Hellas being uniquely bad, it is about it being the one most people buy without thinking, and the whole point of this old man's rant is to make you think. Everything on this list applies. Read the standard Hellas bacon and you will find conventional curing, the nitrites and nitrates that put it in the WHO's Group 1 processed meat category, along with the salt and the sugar of the cure. Check the pack for added water and the phosphates that hold it. And look hard at the origin statement, because like so much New Zealand bacon, a great deal of it is made here from imported pork under that soft local and imported ingredients wording, meaning the pig may well have been raised overseas, possibly in confinement systems this country has banned. Hellas is the mirror of the whole category. The most trusted, most bought bacon in the land carries every one of the issues we have walked through, hidden in exactly the same small print, behind exactly the same trusted, cheerful, familiar packet. The trust is the thing that stops you reading, so read it anyway. And I will say of Hellas what I say of every big trusted name that ends up at number 1 on this channel, because it is the whole heart of the matter, and it is worth repeating until it sticks. The problem is almost never that the famous everyday product is some uniquely wicked thing. It is that it is famous and everyday, that you have bought it 100 times, that your family has always had it in the fridge, so that your hand reaches for it before your brain has woken up. That familiarity is the single most valuable thing a food company owns. It is worth more than any recipe, because a customer buying on autopilot is a customer who never once turns the pack over, never reads the origin line, never counts the added water, never asks the awkward question. The brands did not earn that trust by accident, and they do not keep it by accident, and they are counting, every single day, on you not spending the 10 seconds it would take to read what you are actually buying. So the most powerful thing I can leave you with is not a brand name at all, it is a habit. Wake up in the aisle, turn the trusted pack over, and read it as though you had never seen it before in your life. That one small act undoes most of what this whole industry relies on. So there they are, 10 packets, 10 familiar names, and the same handful of problems running through nearly all of them. Water pumped in and held with phosphates, so you buy brine at the price of pork and watch it weep into the pan. The nitrite and nitrate cure that put bacon into the same processed meat category the World Health Organization labeled a Group 1 carcinogen. The salt and the sugar, and above all the great open secret, the imported pork hiding behind Kiwi-sounding names and Green Hill pictures, and the soft little phrase local and imported ingredients. The packet shows you a happy farm. The fine print tells a longer story. Now here is the good news, and with bacon it is genuinely good, because real bacon from real New Zealand pigs, cured properly, absolutely exists, and once you know what to look for you will find it in the same chiller as all the rest. The whole secret is to look for 2 things. New Zealand born and raised pork, stated plainly, not a Kiwi-sounding name but an actual origin statement, and a cleaner cure, ideally free-range pork from a brand proud enough of its farming and its recipe to tell you all about both. So let me give you 4 that actually earn their place in the trolley. Number 4 of the good ones, Harrington's. Harrington's is a well-known New Zealand small goods maker that has built its name on doing bacon properly, using New Zealand pork and being open about how it makes its bacon rather than hiding behind soft phrases. There is a simple tell you can trust right across this chiller, and Harrington's passes it. The makers who use real New Zealand pork tell you so, loudly and plainly, because it costs them more and they want the credit for it, so they print born and raised in New Zealand, right where you can see it. The makers hiding cheap imported pork use the soft, slippery wording instead, the made in New Zealand and the local and imported ingredients, because that is the most they can honestly say, and they are hoping you read it as more. Loud and specific about origin is a good sign. Soft and vague about origin is the tell. Once you can read that difference, half the chiller sorts itself out in a glance. When a company tells you plainly that it uses New Zealand pork and walks you through its process, that transparency is exactly what the anonymous imported pork brands lack. As always, read the specific pack, because a big maker will have a range, but Harrington's is a strong, widely available step up. Real Kiwi pork from a maker willing to put its name and its method on the line. Buying the pack that tells you where the pig came from, over the pack that hides it, is the single most powerful move you can make in this chiller. Number 3. Freedom Farms. Freedom Farms is about animal welfare first and last. New Zealand pork raised in genuinely free-range and higher welfare systems. From pigs that lived outdoors and rooted about in the dirt the way a pig is meant to, on farms audited to a real welfare standard rather than a marketing slogan. And that word audited is the one that matters, because the aisle is full of soft welfare words that mean nothing much at all. Words like natural and farm fresh and free to roam that no one checks and no one enforces. A real certification, with an independent body coming onto the farm and inspecting it against a written standard, is a different thing entirely from a nice word a marketing team dreamed up. It is the difference between a promise someone made and a promise someone checked. This answers the welfare question that hangs over all the imported pork brands, and it answers it out loud, with certification behind it rather than a pretty picture. You pay more, of course you do, because raising a pig properly outdoors costs more than confining it, and that price gap is the whole difference between a happy pig and a hidden one. If the treatment of the animal matters to you, and for a great many Kiwis it does, Freedom Farms is bacon you can cook with a clear conscience. Number 2. Woody's Free Range. Woody's Free Range does two good things at once, and that makes it a standout. The pork is free-range New Zealand pork, so the welfare and the origin questions are both answered, and Woody's makes genuinely nitrite-free and nitrate-free bacon, cured without the 250 and 251 that put conventional bacon in the WHO's processed meat category. Now a fair word here, because this old man deals straight. Some so-called nitrate-free bacon is cured with celery powder, which is naturally high in nitrate, so it is not always as free of the stuff as the front of the pack suggests, and it pays to read the detail. But a brand that has genuinely set out to make bacon without the added nitrite cure, from free-range Kiwi pork, is doing about as much right as a bacon maker can, and Woody's is one of the names leading that charge. Real pork, raised well, cured clean. Number 1 of the good ones, Henderson's, and topping the good list, Henderson's, a New Zealand maker that has built its reputation squarely on bacon and small goods free from the added nitrates and nitrites, made the cleaner way. When a company makes going without the flagged curing chemicals its whole point of difference, and backs it with real pork, that is a company selling you bacon much closer to what your granddad's butcher made, before the industry learned to pump it with water and cure it with a chemistry set. As with any of these, read the pack and look for the New Zealand pork statement alongside the clean cure, because the two together are the full house. But Henderson's is proof that you can have your Saturday bacon without the pumped-in brine, and without the additive the World Health Organization went out of its way to warn the world about. And I will let you in on the oldest trick of all, one that beats every packet on either list, and it costs you nothing but a short conversation. Find a proper butcher. A real butcher, the kind who cures his own bacon out the back, can tell you exactly where the pig came from, how it was raised, and precisely what went into the cure, because he did it himself, and he will be only too pleased to tell you, because a man who is proud of his work loves nothing more than a customer who asks. You can ask for a lighter cure, you can ask for local pork, you can ask him not to pump it full of water, and he will simply do it, because that is what a butcher is for. We have been trained to think that food comes shrink-wrapped off a supermarket shelf with a barcode on it, and we have quietly forgotten that for the whole of human history, it came from a person you could look in the eye and ask a question. The butcher is still there in most towns, a little dearer perhaps, but selling you real pork, honestly cured, from a pig he can actually tell you about. That is not a step backwards. That is the thing all the pretty packets are pretending to be. And here is the old man's rule for the bacon chiller, and it will never let you down. Turn the pack over and find the country of origin, and do not be fooled by a Kiwi-sounding name, because the name is not the origin statement is. Look for New Zealand born and raised pork, said plainly. Look for free range, if the life of the pig matters to you, and for most of us it does. Watch the pork percentage and the added water, and if a rasher shrinks to nothing and weeps white gunk in the pan, you will know exactly what you paid for, and favor the makers who cure cleaner and tell you how they farm, because a company proud of its bacon prints the truth on the front, while a company hiding cheap imported pork behind green hills prints a feeling. Above all, treat bacon as what it is, a treat, an occasional pleasure rather than an everyday staple, because even the best bacon in the world is still processed meat, and the WHO was talking about all of it. This was never about scaring you off your Saturday fry-up. Bacon is one of the great pleasures of the table, and a rasher of real, well-raised, properly cured pork is a fine thing to put on your plate now and then. The problem is not bacon. The problem is what a handful of big processors have done to it, pumping it with water, propping it up with phosphates, curing it with chemicals the World Health Organization has flagged, and hiding imported pork of unknown welfare behind Kiwi names and happy farms so you never turn the pack over. The supermarket will not tell you, because it wants to sell the bacon. The processor will not tell you, because the soft phrasing is doing its job. So it falls to a grumpy old grandpa to read you the back of the packet. I am a grandpa, and grandpas worry. Look after yourself.